entrepreneurship has become an area I think that so many people are excited about. So many people want to start their own companies. It's never been easier to start a company. There have never been more programs in existence. There's never been more private capital. If you're going to do something as crazy as take a company from zero to, multi-billions of dollars in enterprise value, it takes such an exceptional human to build a company.
Looking back on all your experience, what is the best advice that you ever received? Welcome to Textings.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me. Well, let's start from the top.
Yeah.
Tell me about Anorak. Am I saying that right?
That's right.
Ventures?
Yep, Anorak Ventures.
And Anorak is something around when someone's obsessive about something. Is that correct?
So it's somebody who is deeply interested, bordering on obsessive in niche subjects. It's kind of like a nerd. And the word came from the fact that train spotters, who were kind of the original nerds over in Europe, would always be standing out in the rain counting trains, and they would be wearing anoraks. So it became a term to describe somebody who is obsessed. And then, so it's that meaning, and anorak is a term that's used a lot more widely in Europe, especially in the UK, in place of nerd. But it's also was the main character's avatar in Ready Player One. And because my kind of investing roots are seated with an investment in a VR company, I liked the two meanings of the name.
Yeah.
So we've been investing. So I've been investing full time since about 2014. 2014 was when I left my day job, and I was able to do that because I was an early investor in Oculus.
How did you get involved in Oculus?
There were a couple people who worked in the video gaming industry beforehand who had heard about a kid who was working on a virtual reality headset. That kid was Palmer Luckey. And I met him with a few of the co-founders, Brendan, Nate, and Michael. We took him out to dinner. He was considering taking a job at Sony to lead their VR efforts. And essentially we had a long conversation about kind of what his aspirations were and what he wanted to do. And essentially, the conversation evolved into, well, what if you started your own company? And what if, you had funding and you had the right people around you to do it? And that was, the founding of Oculus. So it was, Palmer was working on a headset already, and then it was Brendan, and it was Nate, and it was Michael who really helped kind of create a business and stand the company up. And because of my relationship with the guys, I was, essentially had a front row seat to what happened there. And it was an amazing thing to witness. They brought a brand new technology to market, and it was amazing to see. It was amazing to witness how they did it, what worked, what didn't work. And it really, I think I've always been excited about innovation, but really seeing it firsthand there and how it was done was amazingly inspiring to me. And when they ended up selling to Meta, then I had the capital to be able to see what it would be like to do this on a full-time basis, see what it would be like to help companies bring new technologies to market, to invest more. And so I took a stab at it, and I did it for a couple of years on my own, made a bunch of mistakes, also made a couple of investments that worked out very well. And that, from 2014 to end of 2016, angel investing, doing a couple of SPVs, and eventually I just had enough people around me and had made enough additional investments to prove to myself that Oculus wasn't just a fluke. I institutionalized and created the first fund.
How did Oculus, that experience, like, shape your investment thesis?
It really opened up my eyes to, like, when you're building something that's really exciting to the average person, to the consumer. Like, at the end of the day, we're all consumers, whether or not you're talking about investors, you're talking about, enterprise customers, you're talking about actual general public. Like, everybody is subject to the same types of excitement and passion. And so if you can ignite that, it kind of works across the board. And seeing the reaction that people had to VR technology and to what Oculus had built, it was just so moving, and it was so exciting to me that it's just what I wanted to do going forward. I wanted to discover more technologies that were gonna, wow people, the idea of going back and working at a company that was, building HR software, SaaS software, it just didn't appeal to me. My eyes had been open to what it was like to bring a brand new technology to market, to see how you could attract investors, amazing talent, customers all aboard. That's kind of just what I wanted to devote the rest of my life to, basically.
Right.
And so we've always been chasing those types of opportunities, those types of visionary founders since I started investing.
So, well over a decade investing in frontier tech. How do you define frontier tech?
I generally, when I talk about the types of stuff that we invest in, it's really one of two things. It's either you're developing a breakthrough innovation yourself. So think, fusion energy, think new forms of manufacturing, think quantum computing, think areas where there is real scientific breakthrough that is required to bring those products to market. At first, many of these things seem kind of more academic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one bucket, I would say, as kind of, frontier tech. And then the other bucket of frontier tech is more nascent technologies that are more well understood and perhaps have applications in other industries.
Right.
But you're using them. The innovation is less in the technology itself and more in its application.
To that industry.
Correct. And so,
I learned that quickly in the 90s, where the first time we did some fundraising with the company I worked with. We're doing handheld mobile technology, which is basically software on a Palm Pilot, the Palm 1. But what I realized really quickly is, like, you could have two wheels, spin the technology and spin the industry and just blend them together and say, how can we use RFID with healthcare?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's what you're talking about in that fashion.
Exactly.
But when we're talking about, like, real tech innovation, hard innovation, it's very different.
It is very different.
And the complexity and the hard part is timing, right?
Yes, absolutely. Timing. I mean, look, timing is extremely difficult to get right. I think, it is in some ways a combination of, like, you need to get the timing directionally right, and you also need to be a Anorak. You need to be incredibly passionate and one of these founders who can just help kind of shape the reality, bend reality to their will, even if the timing is slightly off.
Right.
It's funny, entrepreneurship has become an area I think that so many people are excited about. So many people want to start their own companies. It's never been easier to start a company. There have never been more programs in existence. There's never been more private capital. But really, it takes such an exceptional human to be able to build a company. And part of that is that ability of the founder to be able to kind of bend reality to their will in some ways. If something isn't the way it should be right now, whether or not you're talking about legislation or you're talking about consumer sentiment or whatever, it's that incredible determination, perseverance, work ethic to help bend and change. It's not easy, it's not cheap.
Right.
But I think that is, if you're going to do something as crazy as take a company from zero to, multi-billions of dollars in enterprise value, like, you've got to be exceptional, you've got to be crazy in some ways, you've got to be, it's just a very, very difficult thing to do. So I love seeing all of these people who want to get into entrepreneurship, but at the same time, the characteristic and the personality and what it takes to do so really successfully is, it's just one in a million.
And that's where I'm at, Andrew. It's like, execution's everything. People say that all day long. But I think it's really interesting when people make investments, they spend very little time on understanding if this founder and the current teams can change, can actually execute.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little done on that space, and that just astonishes me. I've worked with like hundreds of teams to help them execute and learn operational intelligence and execution, leveraging systems, which I think matters from the day one. Day one when you're starting a company to exit, from idea to exit. But I think it takes a very unique founder to be able to actually understand the craft of scaling. I think it's a craft. I think it's definitely, you can have some intuitiveness, but you have to learn a lot to actually really scale a company.
Yeah. I think the skill is in the learning and being able to surround yourself with great people, being able to take and being able to process massive amounts of information and distill it down,
right,
and execute on it. Like, I don't think that skill is innate. That scaling muscle is not a muscle, I think, that you can read about. I think you need to have a certain personality, and I think surrounding yourself or being in the company of people who know, what it looks like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, to scale a company, it is kind of used to that ramp, or has had exposure to that ramp beforehand. I think all those things are incredibly important.
And it's going to be impossible to stay away from jiu-jitsu analogies here, but I think one of the most important things jiu-jitsu taught me is the art of learning. You're constantly in a rapid learning environment, surrounded by other people that are in a rapid learning environment, and you're constantly like learning paths and finding where paths fail and why they fail, and then you're asking other people, and someone will do something to you and you'll be like, wait, well, how'd you do that? Or you'll watch something happen, you can't stop it, right? Like, I think those learning loops, I like to think of them as learning loops within organizations. Good founders have learning loops and they learn, but then when they branch on like one team to a team of teams, I think the best founders understand that they have to create those learning loops in their organization. And that's where a lot of times great founders that are good at learning start to fail, when they don't create the systems that allowed them to win when they're smaller.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. I think that there's so many different reasons why I like to roll, why I like jiu-jitsu particularly. The perseverance and the strength that is required, more mental than physical, I think, is something that I train every time I'm there. That ability to get hit and keep on coming, that ability to get tapped and continue out the rest of the session with positivity and enthusiasm, like you're taking, and also that that humbleness of to your point of like knowing that you don't know everything, of trying to learn every time. I think, you know, what's his name? The chef. It'll come to me in a second. But he used to have a comment like, I just try to go there and suck a little bit less every time. Anthony Bourdain. I used to try to go to every session and just suck a little bit less every time. Like, it is humbling every time you go in there. And part of that is the fact that you do need to put your beginner hat on every time and not be too proud to ask questions and to and just to stay humble.
Right. I think it's interesting. Like I've done jiu-jitsu for years, but I also coach wrestling. And what's really astonishing about jiu-jitsu is you can take an unathletic person and they can become athletic. And I've never really seen that in any other sport. Like you can take someone that just has never done any sports before. They don't have any confidence. They don't know what's going on, and they stick with it and they keep doing it. They just become really good.
Yep.
And they will destroy athletic people that don't know as much.
Yep.
But I've never seen like a person that's just not athletic and figures out how to play basketball and becomes really good at it. That just doesn't happen. I think the same is with wrestling. But wrestling's a little bit more aggressive, so it's a little bit harder to break the threshold on that.
Yeah.
But when I work with early jiu-jitsu people or younger wrestlers, I keep on telling them it's a path. The whole each move is a path to another move, which may get stopped, and then if you're successful, it leads to a different position, and then something could happen and you end up in another position. It's like building a path through the woods.
Chain wrestling, yeah.
And the more you go through that path, the wider it gets, the easier it gets, the more nuances you know about all the different parts of that path. But I think organizations are the same way. I think when you get stuck on something, it's like in jiu-jitsu, you can't try to learn everything all the time. You're never going to have any success. Like narrowing down, like, where do I want to focus my energy and focus my time? If it's the problem, the product is the problem, go to market. What's holding us back, and then focusing the team around that. And I think it's very similar analogy with that as well.
It's very interesting too, like there's that phrase, soccer is a gentleman's sport played by hooligans, and rugby is a hooligan sport played by gentlemen. I generally feel as though people who engage in more violent sports or sports that are more kind of battle focused generally tend to be more humble and have more of a sense of being humble and have more of a sense of respect, I think, than other people. And I don't know why that is. I mean, I think one could argue that, like, when you're proving yourself out there physically on a fairly regular basis, you don't feel as though you have a lot to prove. And so you kind of can have this more inner confidence. And you don't get that same necessarily inner personal confidence. At least I don't think so. If you're playing like basketball or a ball sport or something like that, and I love that kind of inner confidence that it gives me. And when I meet whether or not it's investors or founders who roll or who have done wrestling in the past, there's this kind of understanding between us that is.
Well, I don't think there's too many sports where you actually submit to somebody physically. Right. So,
Literally.
And doing that over and over again humbles you.
Yeah.
And, I meet a lot of people that put up a front, like, how's everything going? Oh, everything's going great, and you're like, no, that can't ever be. There's all these things that you're working on and challenges on. And, but you see a lot of that, especially, I think, in founders and some of their team members, because there's not a lot of safe places to go, because you're not going to be like always talking about all things that are bad and not working, because you're selling everybody on this vision, right? From investors to partners to customers to employees. So you have to be confident, right? But there is a balance. And I think when I'm with teams and working with teams, like, one of my first rules is like, this is a transparent environment, an equal environment. We're going to talk about we need to talk about the things that are not working if we're gonna get ahead. We have to talk about these things. We have to be open about these things. I always use this analogy of climbing mountains for peak and what we do, but like it's kind of like carrying boulders in your backpack of issues, and it's just causing so much pain and problems trying to hike this mountain. You can just take those things out and deal with them. And a lot of people have a hard time or feel like they have the right environment, but I think it's important that the teams like create those environments. There's still a hierarchy of decision making, right? Like, so it's not completely equal, but if you're not dealing with that stuff, you're just not going to succeed. I'm curious, looking back on like Oculus going from 0 to success, like how did they go from that vision to execution?
Well, I just want to comment on something you said beforehand, which was interesting, which is I think that I was an entrepreneur before I got into venture. So I had my own business for 6 years, and towards the end of the business, it was not going well. And I remember sitting there opening up overdue bills while receiving phone calls from potential investors about the concept and the context switching that founders need to go through between dealing with the hard things and trying to sell the vision. It's so challenging. Some people are better at compartmentalizing than others, but I can see, there are some founders who kind of have that ability or that desire to always stay super positive and put up this kind of front of what's happening, and they do that in some ways for protective purposes because going open kimono and talking about all the things that are bothering them and all that stuff when they know the next day they have a board meeting where they have to present a positive front can be super challenging for people. Anyway, like I don't know that there's any right way to deal with it. I certainly don't think that keeping completely bottled up the whole time is the right way to go. But different people kind of can handle that context switching and that compartmentalization. They do it in different ways, and I don't know that there's one way that I've seen work super well. I often say that the best founders that I've invested in, they toe the line between confidence and arrogance, I should say. Not humbleness and arrogance. And it's a very, very thin line, right? It's very easy when you're confident in something to appear arrogant.
Right.
And I think founders do need a bit of that edge. They need a little bit of arrogance in the right places. Maybe arrogance isn't the right word. Maybe it's just
probably just a confidence, but
and
unwillingness.
Irrational positivity, I guess, is another way to put it.
Well, I see it too. Like I see so many signals because I'm involved with so many teams where someone might want to like have a conversation about something. I'm like, I just know that I've seen this work 87 times, and that never worked. Right? Like, so like I think when some people look arrogant, it's because they just have so much more knowledge and data that it's just like, well, we don't need to spend time to like discuss this.
I think you're absolutely right.
I'm sure you have moments like that too. You're just like, I don't have the energy or time to have that conversation.
But I'll tell you what the difficulty is with me as opposed to you is that I often find I get concerned when I give advice, especially mainly self-serving advice. That it comes off as self-serving because I'm an investor. So, for example, when I'm talking, like the example that comes up all the time is I'm speaking to an investor. I'm speaking to a founder who I'm excited about. Right. I think that they're raising at too high of a valuation. I think that ultimately it's going to turn some investors off, and it's going to send the wrong message, and they're perhaps doing it for the wrong reasons. That advice I believe to be in the best interest of the company and of the founder.
Yep.
But at the same time, they're looking at it and they're like, of course you want a better valuation. Like, of course
Right.
you would say that. And I feel like oftentimes I will give advice that is both in my best interest and in the best interest of the founder.
Right.
But the founder's skepticism will just pick up on, oh, this guy is a sharky investor and he wants to.
Yes.
Now, if you've worked really hard to build a really strong rapport with your founder, then they should know better. So that is as opposed to, I think, the position that you're in a bunch of times where it's like you're being paid to work with the company to provide the best advice that you can. There's no ulterior motive.
Well, it's interesting. This is interesting. It may be a hack. So, one, that would be a very difficult situation you're in. I can totally understand that. Like you feel like you're giving them the best advice, and it's clear to you, but it's potentially sending a different signal to them.
And
right?
even more so, like, everything you said beforehand about the way, like, this is all I do day in and day out, right?
Right.
So, like, you can read what you want in TechCrunch about funding announcements.
Right.
Those are the exceptions. That's why they're getting press coverage.
Right.
I'm telling you, every day I'm speaking to 5 founders, and I'm watching. I've got infinitely more signal than they do in terms of what's working in the markets, what are the prices people are paying, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's this tremendous information asymmetry as well.
Yep. So it's unique about what I do, and it's probably often misunderstood, is I actually give zero advice. I give zero advice. What I typically am doing is helping the teams define focal points. Like, where do we want to be 3 years out? How are we going to get there? Why do we want to do that? And basically facilitating those conversations. Doing that around a 3-year vision, a 1-year plan, helping them through their OKRs, aligning them team to teams, creating focus, alignment. Where I do teach is the system and the cadence and the rhythm and the review and how to collect that learning loop and all those types of things. And when I'm asked about it, I only share relevant experience. So I can say, this is what I've seen. I am not telling you what to do, but this is what I've seen, and you can take that and go what direction you want with that. Now, when they're talking specifically about, like, hey, we have frictions between product and engineering or sales or whatever, I'd say, like, what I've seen works best is, like, get the teams together. Because typically it's the lack of understanding versus actually probably a lack of really wanting to work together. There's probably that serendipity or that, symbiosis there. So, like, I would say that type of stuff, but I wouldn't say, we're thinking it's going to be 110 million by the end of the year, and this one guy says, I think it's 105.
Yeah.
I'm usually like, why 110, why 105 versus say, I think it's going to be 130, guys. I kind of get out of the way of that. But, relevant experience, I think, helps.
Yeah.
I think you're only as good as your one time you tell them to do something bad if you're a consultant, and I just don't like that type of work at all.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that is the way that I generally try to give,
experience,
help,
relevant
as well.
experience. Yeah.
Is
I've
by
seen
sharing
this
relevant
multiple
experience.
times.
Yeah.
This is what could happen. Basically providing inputs to help them make decisions. So I want to change the conversation a little bit, like looking at the current, like, frontier tech scene. Like, what are you excited about? What are you seeing that you're excited about?
Where we have been spending more time recently is upstream manufacturing.
Okay.
And so going more upstream in terms of the raw materials, in terms of whether or not we're talking about metals and alloys, we're talking about magnets, we're talking about chemicals. We've been investing in hardware product companies for years and years now. And it's only been recently, of course, that geopolitics have heated up.
Right.
That we saw the impact of supply chain disruptions during COVID. And now I just think that there is a real opportunity, when we talk about kind of reindustrialization and we talk about market dynamism and ensuring, let's say, that that critical hardware can be made here or amongst our allies. There, our system and our manufacturing capabilities, both for us and our allies, have been hollowed out over the last several decades. These are all the talking points for American dynamism. But I think what I'm realizing more and more is like, yes, there are a bunch of sexy problems that are more Silicon Valley-esque. You can, create the next lights out advanced manufacturing facility. You can create, the next drone company. But the problems are upstream. The problems are, can these product companies actually produce the thing?
Right.
And
can they create the margins that we used to see like in SaaS?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I don't know whether or not they're ever going to be able to compete with those types of margins, but I do think that the public markets are going to get. I mean, we're already seeing them pulling back from SaaS, and have been seeing that for a while. And I think that we're going to see more and more of the excitement for companies that are building physical things that have tremendous room for growth, even if they don't have the same margin profiles of SaaS companies.
Is that a good example? That's SpaceX.
SpaceX is a perfect example. Exactly. Exactly.
The excitement is creating that value.
Exactly.
In market.
Exactly. So I think, that is the reindustrialization, American dynamism, like those are kind of, big themes that a lot of investors are talking about and excited about. I am excited about those as well. I am also very much excited about what's going on upstream from these efforts.
What kind of investments would be upstream?
Magnets, steel, chemical production, PCB boards, semiconductors, battery manufacturing.
Does that excite you?
Yeah, it does actually. It does, believe it or not.
It's interesting.
I mean, these are just massive industries that have just not seen significant disruption for years.
Right.
And I think if you think about, if you were going to create a Dow Chemicals company today, blank sheet of paper, what would that look like? It would look so different, right, than what was there. The ability to be able to produce things more cleanly, the ability to be able to produce new novel materials fast, bring them to market. Like, these are the core building blocks of our civilization, right? And
just speed alone, would be such a change.
Yep. Yeah, and these are thorny problems that require deep expertise. They will, many of them will require a fair amount of capital. And so, as an investor, dilution and capital efficiency is going to be are big considerations for us. Right. But I don't know. I've always I think Oculus was kind of the exception, but aside from that, I've always really liked these kind of unsexy opportunities in business. Not the company that's building the next canned beverage, but the company that's building the next can or the next new novel material that's going to go in that can.
What's hot in frontier tech right now that you're just not into, that you're bearish in? That other
humanoid robots.
Why is that?
I just think that there's a lot of hype. I think that the companies that are in there are very frothy and have raised an enormous valuations that I think are going to be difficult for them to grow into. I think that if you're going to design systems and technology to solve specific problems, the human form factor is not going to be the best form factor for a whole bunch of these different problems. I'm much more bullish on specialized robotics than I am on the humanoid robots that are coming in. Why are you going to create a human to work in a factory? Like, there are better form factors to be able to we are not optimized to work in a factory, right?
Right.
We were designed to forage and hunt and do shit like that, not fucking lift pallets and work on an assembly line. So I think it's sexy. I think it's cool. And so do investors, obviously.
Right.
I am just not bearish on it.
I think that's a really good argument. Why would you create it in that form when you could create it in a form that would be much more efficient and effective?
If you're going to create the best soldier out there, are you going to create the best soldier with 2 arms or 4 arms? Are you going to create him with 2 legs or tank treads? Like, you know, all of these different use cases, I think, have specialized require or should be using specialized form factors, and I just don't know what you are designing the humanoid robot for. Everything that I've seen in terms of humanoid robots is underwhelming. I mean, they can do martial arts. I was at CES this year, and you saw, you know, probably 24 different humanoid robot companies that were all showing how they could do laundry, and it was none of them were any good at it.
You know what does laundry really well? Washing machine.
Yeah, washing machine. Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing is like dishes. So I have been infatuated with the dish problem for years. If you are going to design something to handle dirty dishes, are you going to design a humanoid robot from scratch that can grab the dish, use the sink, blah, blah, blah? Or are you going to design a specialized machine that you can literally take a plate, slide it in like an old CD player, it cleans it, it stacks it, and that's where your dishes live going forward? Like, you would design a specialized machine just to handle that problem. That's
100%.
it. And that's what I want. And I'm looking for that investment. If anybody is working on a specialized dishwasher that you can just throw in your utensils, your cups, and your dishes.
Already was designed on the Jetsons. You'd have to just go back and watch an
100%.
episode, right? Some things are really easy to see that it's going to come in the future. Like the iPhone. Like, I was working on mobile stuff very early. Like, the idea of all this being in your phone was very obvious to me. Thinking with AI today, it's really changed that dynamic, because now we have something that, in a way, is smarter than us. It's creating kind of a harder to understand what the future will look like. Mm-hmm. As an investor, like, how do you look at that? How do you make your thesis when things are harder to see?
My job is to go out and speak to as many people as possible and understand as many problems as I can, you know, try to find those founders who are building towards the future that I see and are building towards fixing some of the problems that I'm seeing and that I'm researching. I think back to the topic that we were discussing beforehand about, like, how exceptional a founder has to be in order to create an outlier company. You know, I also rely a lot on founders to educate me and get me excited about different problems and really kind of take me along for a journey, tell me a story that really brings me in and gets me excited, that I then want to help solve. If they can do that for me, they can do that for other investors, they can do that for hires, they can do that for customers. And so, you know, I guess there's 2 sides to it. There's the proactive side of, like, me and my partner want to go out there, we want to understand problems, and we want to form beliefs on where we think the world is going. What are the main problems that are facing society right now?
Right.
What are potential solutions to those problems? And then we want to try to meet as many founders as we can in and around that space. We're going to have to say no to a bunch of people who are working on things that we just don't find interesting or fascinating or impactful. But within that sphere of areas that we know that are, or that we believe are going to be problems, we want to meet as many founders as possible, and we want to try to find those exceptional founders who are going to make us believe.
It's no different, like, almost an organization. You're like surrounding yourselves by the space that you want to solve, right? And then you're putting your focus and energy into that space and making decisions on that. how to leverage capital to solving those problems. I see that same thing with a CEO when they're looking at their organization, right? Like, you only have so much capital. Where are we going to put the capital? So you have finite amount of resources, including the capital and energy, which is your people.
Yep.
And it's on a timeline.
100%.
Right.
The three characteristics I look for in my CEOs are: can you set a vision people are going to believe in? Can you attract the right talent? And can you raise money? If you could do those three things well, hire, make sure the company doesn't run out of money, and set a vision that everybody believes in, that's the type of founder that I want to invest in.
Yeah. Looking back on all your experience, what is the best advice that you ever received? Something that kind of pops back in your head over and over again while you operate.
I think spending time on the things that I'm good at and passionate about, and trying to delegate or not spend too much time or wasted energy in areas that I'm just where my heart isn't at, is probably what guides a lot of how I try to spend my time. When I'm thinking about how I manage my time, I'm really thinking about how do I build systems to offload as much of the stuff that I don't enjoy as possible.
Right.
So that I can spend more time on the stuff that I do enjoy, that kind of fills me up, as possible. And I think that kind of discipline around your time and around where you focus your attention has been very useful and guided a lot for me.
That makes a lot of sense too, because when you talk about investors, or you talk about founders and investing in these founders, you're also looking for ones that can build teams, meaning for them to get the right people, right? So they can focus their energy on doing the things that they're best at.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that's definitely, I think, hard. Even if you choose the right people, it's hard sometimes for founders to let go of certain things that they are passionate about, that they want to work on, that sometimes even outgrows them and their passion.
There are great founders who are super technical, who enjoy certain things on the technical side, but have had to let go because if they're the ones who are spending time, on a difficult technical problem, then who the heck is running the company, setting the vision, getting everybody all pumped, things like that. So it's super important, and I think that hiring people who have done it beforehand,
right,
can also be a real hack there, as opposed to bringing in somebody who's just excited and somebody who you've known for a long time and wants to get into the space, like somebody who actually, especially on the sales side, who has a book of business, who has the right contacts, I think can be a real unlock.
Last question. I ask this question all the time. Most important question probably ever been asked in your life. It's more of a scenario. So you are trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. It's a beautiful desert island, tropical islands. You have everything you need: food, water, healthcare, whatever you need. The only thing you don't have is entertainment. There's no entertainment on this island. But luckily for you, an old 80s boombox drifted to shore. But you can only choose one album to listen to the rest of your life. What album are you going to listen to? It doesn't have to be 80s. It can be any genre.
Goddamn. I mean, my first...
You answered everything else so quick.
My first instinct would be a Pearl Jam album.
Okay.
But then, I don't know, Eric Clapton Unplugged holds a very special place in my heart. That was like me growing up.
It's a great album. That's a flawless album.
Yeah, I probably would go with that one. Just because there's so many sides to that album. There's like the slow, chill side, and then there's also some like great upbeat tracks in there as well that just make you happy. So I would probably go with Eric Clapton Unplugged.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it's awesome.